Let's start with the easy one, which is configuring local switching. This one is easy because the way you do it is simply to go to your SSID. By the way, you need to make sure that you have some access points set in Flex Connect mode, right? So here I have two APs. One is in local mode connecting to my controller, and the other one, as you see, is in a different subnet. This one is in a branch far away, and that AP is set to Flex Connect mode. So you need to have APs in Flex Connect mode for this to make any sense. So if I click on my AP, you see here it's in Flex Connect mode, and its subnet is something different from my controller. It did join my controller, by the way, because it had information about this controller. Remember my section on the discovery of controllers? Here I was using option 43. All right, fine, let me go to my SSID. For example, test one. I have two SSIDs. I could use either of them, this one. And by the way, you can have a different configuration. One SSID for a Flex Connect and another SSID on the same Flex Connect may have a different configuration. It's pretty much up to you. So that's an individual SSID configuration. So let me go to that SSID test one. And if I want to locally switch the traffic on my Flex Connect AP, I just go to Advanced, go all the way down to the left and check that box, Flex Connect Local Switching. Done. From now on, traffic going through test one on any Flex Connect access point will be locally switched on that Flex Connect access point. Traffic going through that SSID going through local access points, local mode, will still go through the controller. So you see that the behavior is going to be depending now on the configuration of the access point. You cannot really push some access points in Flex Connect mode to locally switch that SSID and some other access points in Flex Connect mode to centrally switch that SSID. That's a global setup for the SSID itself. So if you set local switching, it's going to be locally switching on all the Flex Connect access points that support that SSID. If you want to have some APs Flex Connect that locally switch that SSID and some others that do not locally switch that SSID, this is where you would create two profiles. One profile that you call, I don't know, central, with the same SSID string test1 and the same security setup, and where you check local switching. And then you would have some access points support that SSID and not some others, and we'll check later on in this module how you do that. And then you would create a second profile, locally switch, for example, with the same string, test1, and there you would set a different configuration for local switching for that test1, and you would affect that test1 SSID second profile to the other access points. So that makes that some APs will be supporting the version of test1 that is centrally switched, and some other access points, Flex Connect as well, will be supporting the other test1 profile that is locally switched. So that's how you would differentiate. But if you have only one SSID that bears the name test1 and the profile name, then that behavior is going to be global for all the Flex Connect access points. One feature may be interesting for you to notice. It's the Learn Client IP address. And you see it came on automatically when I checked the box Flex Connect Local Switching. And the reason why it does that is because if you are local switching, any traffic after authentication is going to be local, including the HTTP request. So that makes that when you locally switch, your controller doesn't really have a view of the access point's client's IP address. So when you enable local switching, it turns on automatically Learn Client IP address. You can switch it off, of course, if you want to. But that feature allows the AP, every time it learns about a new client and that new client IP address, even if it's locally switched, to tell the controller about that client IP address. And this is useful for you from the controller standpoint when you manage the entire network to know what clients you have on that access point and what IP address they got as well. So that's very useful for troubleshooting and simply monitoring. So if I check that box, local switching, Learn Client IP address comes on automatically. Of course, it doesn't apply if you use central switching because it goes through the controller anyway. So that's only useful when you locally switch. There are some other options below, but those are more advanced options that you don't really need to know about. There is one here which is local auth. We'll come back on that very soon, but the other options are more complex options. Click Apply. From now on, my SSID is locally switched, which means that if clients go through that access point, which is in local mode, traffic will go through the controller. And if clients go through the other access point, which is in Flex Connect mode, traffic will be switched. So again, be careful. Behavior is different based on the access point configuration. So you could repeat the same configuration for all the other SSIDs. But what about the VLAN? As you can see, my Flex Connect AP is in VLAN 23. So what happens to the SSID if I send people to that access point to be locally switched? Well, here there is something you also may need to know. The fact is that there is an interface configuration on the SSID, but if you go to the access point itself, there is this option which is VLAN support. If you don't check it, and it's not by default, the AP is simply going to send client traffic to the local switch without any VLAN tag. So if my AP is in VLAN 23, all my traffic is going to go to VLAN 23. That's okay, maybe if you support only one SSID and if there is no VLAN tagging you want to care about. But if you have multiple SSIDs on that access point and you're supposed to send clients to different VLANs locally, then you need to have more configuration. First of all, you need to set your access point port to that FlexConnect AP to trunk. You see for now it's in VLAN 23, it's in access, so there is no tagging that is aware on the switch as well. So what I need to do first is go to that interface and set the port to trunk so that I can have different VLAN tags on that port and the switch would understand it. So I go to the interface, switch port trunk, and I say encapsulation is going to be .1Q because it's the 3750, and then I say switch port mode trunk. I still want my AP to be in VLAN 23. So what I need to do now is to tell my port that the native VLAN is going to be 23. This is key to remember because the FlexConnect AP is always going to get its IP address from the native VLAN. There is no tagging there. So VLAN 23 here is my native VLAN. My access point is going to get its IP address from VLAN 23. That is something that gets people all the time. You have to put the AP in the native VLAN for it to get its management IP address from there. So if I check my configuration, my port is in trunk mode now. Native VLAN is 23 and encapsulation.1Q. Of course, it was in access. If it were in access mode, it would be in VLAN 23, but it's in trunk. Now that this is okay, I can go back to my controller, go to my access point and check VLAN support. I can have VLANs now on that access point and VLANs are going to be understood at the switch level as well, so this is going to work. So I go back here and just check the box VLAN support. And as soon as I do this, I need to tell my controller what is the native VLAN ID. And this is necessary because if we tell at the SSID level that I need to send my users to VLAN 23, because of this configuration, my access point will know that this is a native VLAN and therefore there is no VLAN 23 that needs to be tagged there. Notice that VLAN mapping is inactive. I need first to validate VLAN support and the native VLAN before I can configure some other VLANs and some VLAN to SSID association on that access point. All right, click apply and suddenly my VLAN mapping becomes available. So if I click this, you'll see we'll get more into this into the group configuration section, but you see I have my SSIDs. Those are in gray because they are centrally switched anyway, so I cannot do anything with those. But then above, I have that one SSID that I am going to locally switch. And for this, you see that on the right, the natural VLAN ID association is VLAN 31. And the reason is because that's the configuration on my controller. But if I want to change this, I can edit this field and put another value instead. For example, suppose I want to send people to VLAN 25. And I can select that field, put that value, and you see at the top I have this Make AP Specific option, which is a way for me to override the WLAN specific information with a different value for that AP. So I put VLAN 25, check the box, and say for this one, Make AP Specific. So now when people are going to go through that SSID on that access point, instead of being sent to VLAN 31, they're going to be sent on VLAN 25. We'll see when we configure FlexConnect groups, that's something you can also configure at group level for many access points. If you want to go back to the default, you just check this, uncheck the Make AP Specific, and you get back the configuration you had at the SSID level before. So you see it's WLAN specific. All right, let me put it back to AP specific so we have some differences between the two access points. Apply. All right, so now if everything works well, if I associate a client to test one on my FlexConnect access point, that client should be sent to VLAN 25 instead of VLAN 31. So let's try. Let me take a client, associate it, make sure I disable the other access points and see what happens. All right, my client's here. So if I go to detail, here we go. You see I have two clients now. They are both associated to the same access point, which is my FlexConnect AP. They are in test 1 and they are in VLAN 25. You can tell from the IP address they got from my local switch in my remote branch. And the AP name tells you that they are really on the FlexConnect access point. Anyway, the other one is disabled, so I know there is no risk because it's a lab environment. But that's how you know that which AP is being used, and that explains why there may be some global setting or why you may have some specific IP address scheme for those clients. So it's easy now because I have only two, but when you have many clients, many APs, it may be confusing to get which one gets what IP address and why. So having both the access point name and the client IP address is useful to know why you get this and that. And that's pretty much all you need to know on local switching.